South Africans could soon see a change to how and when they access their pension funds. The Finance Minister has announced draft legislation to the Pensions Funds Act. The new legislation could see cash-strapped consumers dipping into their savings when needed. To help us navigate these changes, I'm now joined in studio by Rationale, CEO of Rise Proprietary. Mr. Lawanji, thank you so much for your time and for joining us in the studio this afternoon.
Thank you.
Perhaps then I want us to break this down, these new changes, pending changes to the Pension Funds Act, and in the lamest terms as possible, what this will mean for South Africans.
So the changes pronounced by the Minister, the draft proposals at this point, it's really about early access to your retirement fund. So if the proposals do go ahead, you'll be able to access 1/3 of your pension fund over a 12-month cycle. The compromise is that the other 2/3 will be preserved till retirement. So this really came after the COVID crisis, where there was a need for households to access emergency funding. For example, not only funding but also finance. For example, we know households with less than 10,000 rand income per month have almost no opportunity to access mortgage financing. So this will alleviate most households in that regard. We also know that a lot of employees leave the employ simply to access the retirement fund, which is not good given our unemployment statistics, and that also really hampers retirement outcomes. So allowing members to dip into 1/3 of their benefit while preserving 2/3 to retirement gives them opportunity to access emergency capital, but also can improve retirement outcomes.
I expect that, this is not something that's probably going to happen overnight, and several other processes need to be followed. And as far as once, the changes to the Act are then given the green light, but then perhaps speak to us just how it will then definitely work.
Okay, so in terms of expectation of when this is going to happen, the changes are quite complex in terms of how we implement it. So we expect this to be implemented within 2 to 3 years, given the changes that are required. There's various things we need to look at. For example, the Income Tax Act and how the 1/3 portion will be affected. Also, the investment strategy that underpins the retirement funds will have to change, because essentially we're going to have 2 pots of monies going forward. So there's a few aspects that the industry needs to look at to ensure that it's implemented.
I suppose then that it might be good news for some South Africans who are in need of the money to say that, once you reach a certain point, if you do want access to your money, you will be able to. But do you think, in your view, there is really an appetite from South Africans to go into this?
Yes, I think there is. As I said, a scary statistic is that it's very hard to access finance, particularly for lower income households. And one of the reasons why we don't have good retirement outcomes in the industry, and it's quite a sophisticated industry, is that people are not able to preserve their benefits till retirement. So one of the main reasons why they dip into the retirement savings is that they need access to capital. So giving them access to capital while still forcing 2/3 of the retirement benefit to be preserved to retirement will ensure, it's the best of both worlds. It allows access to capital, and it ensures that you have improved retirement outcomes. There is a case to be made that if a member would have never dipped into that 1/3 that was previously not accessible to him until retirement or upon withdrawal, that now that you're putting that temptation in front of that member. But I think if you look at the broader society needs and the real dire need for access to capital, I think it's a good compromise and a way forward.
And you're mentioning the issue of, the temptations that then will exist for many South Africans to say, I really feel like I'm in a very tight position, let me dip into my savings. But then, as far as government's role and as far as supporting and educating South Africans on how basically this money can be used, do we have any programs? What will we be doing, and as far as, supporting South Africans to making the right decisions, looking at investments and so forth?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I think when we look at debt, there needs to be a lot of financial education as to how we use debt. There needs to be financial education in general on how we can save for retirement and for our life cycle needs. I often think of the Singaporean system, where the savings is not only for retirement, but it's a general pot of savings that you can access for certain things you need during your life. For example, to improve your own education, to allow allow you to educate your child, allow you to purchase your first house. So I think this move to the 2-pot system, as it's referred to, is a evolution closer to that type of social security structure.
And I wanted to speak at, some of those available ports for South Africans to sort of invest in once you do take, money out of your savings account. And you are mentioning a very pertinent issue where some people will say, I want to take this amount of money invested in my children's education. But then as far as growing that amount of money that they've taken out of their savings, what are the possibilities for those who want to invest in that sense?
Well, we'll have to look at the tax treatment once the legislation comes into effect. But I think given the tax breaks that are currently in the pension fund system, it's probably best to save within an official pension fund scheme. It can add up to 2% annually just because of the tax breaks that you get on the income tax side. But if people want to save outside that structure, National Treasury has introduced like the tax-free savings scheme where you're exempted from income, dividends tax and capital gains tax. And so they're really trying to promote savings. And our own business, Rise, which stands for Retirement Investment Savings for Everyone, on our platform we're trying to democratize savings for everyone. So our members can purchase any share on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange with no minimums, where previously they were preserved with people with lots of money. So you need at least 15,000 Rand to purchase shares on the stock exchange.
And sorry to interrupt you over there, as much as we are, a certain aspect or groupings of South Africans who might understand that this is, a route that they can take and as far as investing their money. But the reality on the ground is that many South Africans are cash-strapped. The cost of living is continually rising, and it's become an issue of living from hand to mouth the whole time. But then how is this going to work in the favor of those who might not be in the knowing?
No, I agree with you that, available savings to save on the side is quite difficult for most South Africans. The budgets are tight. But we think by removing the barriers in terms of no minimums, removes that excuse, so to speak. So even if you have 50 Rand to start saving, then you can start your saving cycle, often compared to a health regime. So if you want to become healthy, you don't become healthy overnight. You have an eating plan and a fitness plan. And it's very similar in terms of getting out of debt and accumulating a nest egg. You start with very small amounts of money, and we enable that so that there are no minimums, and you can start a saving cycle. And it's quite affirmative once you put your first 50 Rand and you start saving in that matter, and you see how it builds up over time. So we're hoping that's one of the initiatives we're looking at to get savings, improve the savings culture in the country.
And I suppose you're liking this to the issue of like living a much more healthy lifestyle, which is the same thing for your health as well. That do you, in your view, that South Africans are in the position of like having better and solid relationships with the debt that they create and how to maintain a good financial standing point of view, and before a person finds themselves in a position where they're now able to dip into their retirement savings and take out amount of money, are they already equipped and already strong enough to resist the temptation of, forming even more negative relationships with money?
I think I agree with you on that point. I think there's some education required, particularly for consumers to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. Ideally, if we have a good savings net, then we don't need to fall into the trap of accessing debt to buy whatever we need. So, that financial education and understanding is required.
Well, Mr. Lwanje, thank you so much for your time and for speaking with us this afternoon. I hope you have a lovely Saturday afternoon further.
Thank you.